Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Michelle Rosado, and I work in the performance office at the Connecticut State Department of Education. Thank you for taking the time today to participate in the second of the CSDE's Professional Learning Series, Supports for Districts. We want you to know that the staff at the CSDE is here to support you in every way possible. We hope that you and your families continue to be well during this time. Just a few housekeeping things for those of you on the call. Again, thank you for attending, and just to remind you that all attendees will be placed on mute for the duration of the webinar. However, we do welcome questions, and please use the Q&A feature in your GoToWebinar control box to ask questions. And questions will be addressed by the presenters at the conclusion of the session. And just as a reminder, the session is being recorded and will be posted to the CSDE's website. All right, our presenters today are Megan Alubicki-Flick and Gladys Labas. So just a little bit about our presenters. Megan works as an education consultant with a focus on English learners, and she's been employed at the department since 2010. She manages Title III and the state's bilingual grants, as well as supporting English learner instruction and professional learning for teachers. She has worked as an EL teacher in Hartford and in Finland, and she was a Fulbright Fellow. She is pursuing her doctorate currently with a focus in EL. And she's joined by Dr. Gladys Labas, who's newly appointed Director of Equity and Language, leading the CSDE's work to provide districts with programmatic support required to best meet academic, social, emotional needs of students who are EL. Dr. Labas has 5 decades of experience serving as a teacher and an administrator in urban districts, including Meriden, Hartford, and New Britain. She was most recently Associate Professor in Educational Leadership and Policy Studies at SCSU and an officer at SCSU's American Association of University Professors. All right, so I think I'm gonna turn it over to Dr. Labas.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. And I also want to say that we are aware of the enormous amount of time you have been devoted to transitioning to remote teaching and learning. And we want to facilitate this transition the best way possible. Hence, we're going to begin with resources for our English learners. So what to look for in distance learning material for our English learners, and what to think about in those resources. First of all, the accessibility is critical, and also easy to use by students. So we want to make sure that it's clear, accessible, easy to navigate, and they don't have to go through so many steps to get to the information. What other alternative resources we want to look for? We obviously, as we're looking for resources, we want to look for such as college and career readiness materials for our ELs. We also want to look for social emotional materials. Those are also important, and they could also in many of the websites could be found. So we want to look deeper into some of these resources. Next. So do we only look for EL resources? Absolutely not. We also want to look into the district's resources that are available. They're excellent resources. Also, they're accessible. We also want to provide the students with these resources that are in their home language, because as you know, now parents are also assisting in this process. So we want to use their home language to be able for the students to access their these materials. And now Megan will be speaking in regards to the different resources available.
Good afternoon. This is Megan Alubicki-Flick. I'm glad to be here today with all of you and with Gladys and Michelle to share with you some helpful resources that we have identified that may be of assistance in the various areas that Gladys just noted. Specifically today, we're going to look at a couple of resources that are specifically EL program resources, others that are content area resources, others that are accessibility tools, and finally, others that are materials and tools for multilingual communication with families. I'd like to start by saying a couple of things. First, these are very uncertain times. I so appreciate your support, your guidance, our collective effort on behalf of our students. And I appreciate these opportunities to come together, at least in this format, to be able to share good practices, good policies, and to move forward together on behalf of our students. With that said, I wanted to note that I have a 4 and a 5-year-old coworkers that I am sharing my workspace with these days, as well as a snoring dog. So these are definitely unusual times. Also, I wanted to note that there are a variety of folks that are on this webinar in various roles. So for some of you, some of these materials may be things that you've been using for a number of years, perhaps. In other cases, this may be a totally new idea. So please look at these kind of with a fresh set of eyes. If you've been using these resources for a while, you may find that there's some new functionality that makes these resources even more accessible for our students. Also, for those of you that are L bilingual experts, I do recommend sharing these resources and others with your generalist colleagues, our content area teachers, our grade level teachers, our administrators, so that we can as robustly as possible support our students across the grade levels and across the curriculum. The first and additionally, I wanted to make one comment. You'll see that on each of the slides, on each of the slides with a resource that I'm discussing, I have included the actual web address, some of which are quite short and others, as you'll see, are pretty long. I've done that because in order for us to post this, on the CSDE website, we will need to provide a transcript, and that will be done in a very timely manner. However, if you wanted to use these resources right away, you can certainly just take a screenshot of what you're watching, and you'll have that website available so you can access it. So that's why those are there. So I would like to start with BrainPop ELL. BrainPop is a tool that many of us are using. It includes a wide variety of grade levels, as well as a wide variety of content areas. In addition to the generalist content areas, the L-oriented programming includes a placement test, as well as very engaging content such as unique videos, fun activities, and a range of topics on which the lessons are based. They can be used independently in a one-off fashion by students. They can be used in a series of lessons for self-guided practice, or a teacher can assign specific lessons at particular levels. Next. Because of the design of this webinar, we're not going to go directly to the sites. So what I've done is selected a small screenshot from the website so that you can see some of the most relevant content as you're thinking about how to support your English learners. Specifically here, this screenshot shows the bottom right-hand side of the homepage of the BrainPop ELL. Specifically, if you look at the bottom, you'll see introducing assignments and the for teachers tab. Both of those will be helpful to you if you would like to provide your students with assignments, or if you'd like to better understand the functionality of BrainPop ELL for teachers specifically. Next. The next resource that I would like to discuss is Randall's ESL Cyber Listening Lab. For those of you that have looked for opportunities to practice listening for your students through distance learning or virtual learning, you know that they can be limited. This website offers some really great content for grades 3 through 12, as well as for adult learners. There's varied and high interest content that is offered through podcasts. Teachers can assign the podcasts to include quizzes, and there is immediate quiz feedback on vocabulary and comprehension that can be provided to students. So this is a nice opportunity for students to get immediate feedback and to either select information or podcasts that are of high interest to them, or to be assigned content that the teacher deems appropriate and necessary for them. Next. This screenshot is of the homepage of Randall's ESL Cyber Listening Lab, and you'll see at the top right, I've highlighted listening activities. From there, you will be able to access the full collection of podcasts and the various activities that can be offered through this very innovative and high quality website. Next. As I move into content area resources, I want to remind you that the guiding questions for looking for high quality resources for ELLs are what Gladys delineated at the beginning of this webinar presentation. Specifically, how accessible is the resource for ELLs? How can I tell when I'm looking at the content online, what is showing me that this is highly accessible and going to be good for my students? Are there any other alternative resources that may include more embedded supports for ELLs? Of course, we know that there always might be something else, but since you have a wide variety of programs and access to websites at your availability, I recommend thinking about that comparative question as you're considering, for instance, read aloud websites or reading passage websites, something of that nature. So please keep those guiding questions in mind as we walk through this PowerPoint, but also as you're looking through these websites and others after the fact. This next content area resource, can you go back, Michelle? So this next content area resource is Unite for Literacy. This is a pretty amazing site. It includes books for students in grades K through 6, and there are books offered in English and Spanish, so English texts as well as Spanish texts. In addition to that, though, there's narration available in 43 languages. Next. In order to access that narration, you'll see under the Language Dialog Narration tab, the opportunity to select Chinese, Spanish, Somali, Arabic, or, as I've highlighted, more languages. So what I would encourage you to do in this case, like Unite for Literacy, consider another similar type website, like a Storyline Online. Storyline Online offers great content, but there are no books that have narration. There's no other languages for which that is available. So this, if we were going to weigh a Storyline Online or Unite for Literacy for our English learners, the Unite for Literacy is going to be more accessible for a broader range of our students. Next. Of course, many of you, all of you perhaps, are very, very familiar with Khan Academy. Khan Academy has been building out its content for several years, and it is just completely full of very high quality resources for our students. It now offers math content offered from K to 12, as well as a variety of other high school content areas, AP courses, etc. All of these courses can be accessed in multiple languages. Next. In order to access other languages, it is a little tricky. You have to go to the very bottom of the home page on the left-hand side and find where it says language and select the language that you are choosing to receive the content in. This will provide much more access to students as they are navigating through the content. And it supports the continuation of biliteracy and multiliteracy and the development of a student's home or native language, in addition to the development of academic language in English. Next. Moving on to accessibility tools. And before I get into this one, I'd like to talk a little about what I mean when I reference accessibility tools. Here, I'm talking about a range of tools designed to make content accessible and comprehensible for ELs and students that might not be able to access them otherwise. These kind of resources include tools that summarize complex texts, offer read alouds, include tools like highlighting, annotating, native language supports such as glossaries, and can even include Google extensions and things of that nature. Accessibility tools are like the universal tools and designated supports that we're often discussing. Steinhardt Online Glossaries is an amazing accessibility tool. There's a variety of features that make it great. There's content-specific, grade-specific, academic vocabulary glossaries that offer an enormous catalog of content. This again promotes and values bilingualism and multilingualism, as well as biliteracy and multiliteracy. For some students that have a different native language, native language or a home language other than English, there may be areas of academic language that they are lacking in that language. Utilizing a glossary enables students to develop academic language both in their home or native language as well as in English. All of the most common languages in Connecticut are included, and as you'll see here, there are many, many more. Next. This is just a tiny snippet of a very, very lengthy collection of resources. You'll see that there are numerous languages, as well as grade level content and different content areas. While I've only selected math here, there are particular courses of math, as well as science and others, in addition to the glossaries being separated by different grade spans. This is an excellent resource and I highly recommend. I recommend all of these, but this one really is remarkable. Next. For this next one, I've identified a completely different type of accessibility tool. Here we have an auto highlight. It's a pretty simplistic Google extension. It is easily added, and essentially what it does is it highlights the main ideas of a text. So if I'm looking at a text, an online text, and I have added this Google extension to my toolbar, when I click that Google extension, which I'll demonstrate next, you will see that, or you won't see here, but what you would see is that it will highlight the text, the main ideas, and the important summary statements. Next. So I've added the Google extension to my own computer, and I've highlighted it here and made a silly looking arrow. When you click on that, the text, the main ideas of the text on the website that you're visiting, and the summary statements of the website you're visiting will be highlighted in yellow. So this is a nice opportunity to give students a simple tool that enables them to really focus on the priority parts of the texts that you share. And I did choose the glossaries and the auto highlight to demonstrate the very, very wide range of tools that together represent this range of accessibility tools that we can offer to our students. Next. Moving on, I'm going to share some multilingual resources for communicating with families. The first is, again, a relatively simple Google operation that changes the language in Google Classroom. As I was referencing in other previous supports that I discussed with you today, this offers an opportunity to help support the homeschool connection, as well as developing native and home language, academic language and literacy, at the same time developing English. This can be done very easily, and there's numerous languages available so that families have a better command of the expectations of the Google Classroom, the assignments, and the functionality of Google Classroom. Next. Here I've included a screenshot of the 7 steps to make this, to change the language. This may need some support for families. Nevertheless, they are included here and they're easily accessible at the very long website that I've included above. Next. These are really challenging times, and it's challenging for families to figure out how to navigate as we all try to grapple with homeschooling, supporting students at various levels, carrying on in many cases with our typically out of the home job, and more. With that said, this is a nice opportunity to introduce families to Google Classroom using tutorials in their own language. Here I've included Google Classroom tutorials in Arabic, Portuguese, and Spanish. These tutorials offer information to families, voiced over information through the YouTube tutorial that also shows step-by-step instructions and visuals for how to utilize the Google Classroom. Next. This is a screenshot of just one of the Google Classroom tutorials, this one in Arabic. I would have loved to demonstrate how there were numerous step-by-step instructions. In one screenshot, it's difficult to do that, but I assure you that there were several visuals both before and after this one that familiarize families in a broader way and a multilingual way with the resources of Google Classroom. So those several areas comprise some high quality resources for English learners and for their families. I want to remind you that there are many, many more. We know that you are probably a bit overwhelmed with the massive amount of resources that are in fact available. And it can be really difficult to navigate which ones are helpful, which ones are not as helpful, which ones are more or less appropriate for your own district's needs, your students' needs, etc. So while I just highlighted 2 from each of those 4 areas, there are many more, and there are certainly very high quality resources among them. With that in mind, we have a few reminders. The first reminder is to engage with contacts of programs that your district has in place already. I'm sure that many of you have already done that, but in the event that you haven't and you feel like you're scrambling to kind of cobble together resources, remember that then you have programs in place. There are programs with personalized learning, such as Imagine Learning or iStation and others, and they offer digital resources that can be utilized for engaging academic learning at home. So if your district does utilize these or other programs, I do recommend reaching out to inquire about how they can be utilized remotely. And I found that there are a number of programs that they're tirelessly working to accommodate students and families and districts during these times. So you may be surprised that some of the functionality that may not have been available before this situation is now available and accessible for families. So it's just a reminder to keep in touch with those folks and keep reaching out to ensure that you are making full use of the resources that you do have available to you. For those of you that may be seeking professional learning on English learners, I've included the link to our professional learning series, The Pathways to Success for English Learners. Some of you may be familiar with the series, but for those of you that are not, typically these professional learning opportunities are offered in person, and then they are developed as online, accessible, free of charge, open source professional learning modules that can be accessed on demand. They are not specifically for EL bilingual experts. While ESL and bilingual experts may benefit from the content, there is a great deal of content that is oriented specifically for generalist folks, either mainstream teachers, content area teachers, grade level teachers, administrators, etc. We just recently launched the Cultural Competence and ELS module, and the ELs in Connecticut's schools, guidelines for administrators. The second one goes into great detail about the guidance document published last fall by the same name. And you'll see that there's a wide variety of information available in that document. Others include designing accessible learning experiences for ELs in secondary classrooms, digging to the core, respectful tasks and texts for ELs in secondary classrooms, effective pedagogy for ELs, theory versus practice, processes and procedures for identifying ELs, scaffolding to support English language development, ELs in the inquiry process, and teaching oral language development and foundational reading skills for ELs. This is a joint project that is funded through federal Title III funds, a joint project with the CSDE and the RESC Alliance, and these are of very high quality. I do recommend checking them out. They include not only a presentation, they include a script, a voiced over presentation, and every single resource that would be made available to you if you were attending an in-person session. They can be geared toward your needs. If you are still operating, working with a team remotely, you could work through one together. You can work through one alone. It's really up to you how you like to progress, and you can move at your own pace through the content. In order to register, you just click on that link that I've provided and then click on the link to get access, and you will be given a unique code, but again, it's free of charge and accessible to you on demand. As you likely know, we have a COVID-19 CSDE page. It is what you get to. That's our first page of the CSDE site. Please do check out the CSDE resources that are shared. In the broader resource documents, there are some specific resources to English learners, but there are also specific resources for English learners in other areas of that page. Specifically, under the heading Resources for Educators, you'll see the RESC Alliance and CSDE resources for distance learning. If you click on that, you'll get to a Google Drive, and it is separated by different content areas. So there's one specific to English learners and several different tabs that that are focused on different topical areas that for the different resources. So I do recommend checking that out. Additionally, there's ongoing work to update the linguistic support portion of the CALP standards document. For those of you that have used the Connecticut English Language Proficiency Standards, you may recall that the linguistic supports are really where the rubber hits the road portion of the document. What can I use today in my content area class to support an English learner at level 1 of English language proficiency? What can I use in my PE class or my math class or my elementary class? What can I use to support students that are almost approaching proficiency in English, but still need some targeted supports? That is where you'll find those linguistic supports. And there were some dead links because the document is approaching 5 years old, and so we are updating those rapidly. At this point, I'd like to go back to Michelle if questions have been raised by the audience.
Great, thank you, Megan, and thank you, Gladys. Really appreciate your leadership during this time, and we do have a few questions. Hold on for a second. I had them, somebody is, just give me a second. There, all right. Our school has recently gone to Google Classroom as a platform to reach our students. This is new to me. Do you have some strategies to support me as a classroom push-in TESOL teacher?
I guess my answer is yes, absolutely. But what I would like to do is respond more in detail, connect you with some of the resources that I discussed today and that are additionally available. For instance, Google Read and Write is an amazing tool that we could build a whole webinar on because it's so it's not complex, it's deep. There's a lot there. So Gladys, do you think that we could collaborate and provide a response to that, or would you like to address it more now?
No, I think you addressed it, and we need to do more, you and I talk and probably set up, based on these questions, a kind of an informational one sheet that people could go into, like you just mentioned, one resource, and we could really go deeper into some other resources that we could provide via other medium and upload it into our website at the state, and teachers and professionals could look at it and download it.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And I do think this is a question that probably a lot of others have. So thank you to whoever raised it. And there will be more to come on that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we can definitely, I can provide you with a list of all the questions, but let's see if maybe you have some guidance for some of the others that were asked. So here's another one. I used to use Google Translate on my phone with a level 1 high school student. Now I am meeting with him on Google Meet or Zoom. How can we chat with each other, translating while we are meeting? How can we chat with each other with translation while we were meeting?
That's a great question, and
Yes.
it's one that I don't feel equipped to fully answer right now, but it is one that is absolutely pressing, especially during these times, and I would like to respond after we collect more information that can be provided to you.
I agree. I agree.
Thanks, guys. This one's an easy one and I can handle this. Is this PowerPoint available to participants? And yes, it is. We will email it out to everyone on the call, and then we will be posting a fully a webinar version with the narration and all that very soon on our website. Okay, here's another one about BrainPop. Is there a way for teachers to assign and track without purchasing BrainPop ELL? We only have BrainPop Junior.
Yes, now there is. The content is accessible. You can request access as a teacher, and you can have access to the content, enabling you to assign assignments to students.
Yes.
As a result of COVID.
Yes. Yeah.
Does the highlight tool work on Google Docs if the text is there?
I'm not sure.
Either.
I tried it on a range of various websites, different domains and websites, but I didn't try it on the Google Doc. I apologize, and that will be included in our questions that we answer after the fact. I'll look into that.
One of our attendees wanted to make sure that everyone understood that RAS Kids is now free during this time, and it's an excellent resource for ELs. Are you two familiar with that?
I am familiar with that both professionally and personally because my own 5-year-old coworker is utilizing. And yes, it is accessible. A nice feature of RAS Kids is that if you're doing guided reading, for instance, you can record and your teacher receives your recording of your guided reading book. So that's a nice feature. It also will, there's quizzes on particular guided reading books, and those quizzes you can click the button and you can either read questions or they can be read aloud, and so you'd be looking at the text as you're hearing the question read to you. And as you're going through guided reading books, the word that is being read is highlighted, which is another great feature for all students, but especially for English learners. So thanks for bringing that up.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and I think this one, there's also one about, do we know what other districts are doing in terms of navigating virtual learning for their EL, para-educators, assistants, etc.?
I'll offer what I know, and then I don't know if Gladys, if you know other things. Essentially, I just know anecdotally what I'm hearing and what people are saying, and it sounds like people are really just, for lack of a better term, cobbling together resources to the best of their abilities. What I would like to call attention to is if you reach out to your RESC, RESCs are going to be offering some virtual office hours for those of you that receive the Title III or bilingual distribution list communications. I sent one last night regarding that. In lieu of some of the work that we do through that Pathways to Success for English learners modules and professional learning series, we moved toward the virtual office hours. So each of those office hours will provide access to 2 EL-oriented RESC staff members at the same time, and there are a number of different days and times. So either reach out to your RESC, check in with the person that oversees your bilingual or Title III grant who received that information, or we can certainly share that information here as well.
Thank you, Megan. Great. Are there any good resources for U.S. history and civics instruction? I have found finding content with accommodations very difficult, especially for civics.
Yes. Yes, there are. Yes, there are good resources. The ones that come to my mind right away are Common Lit is one. That's secondary content of a variety of various content areas. We Speak NYC is another open source materials that they're video based and they're really based on civics specifically, and they're like real New York City people that are doing these skits. But they're very, very well done, very well produced. Those come to mind. But then of course there are those the glossaries that we were referencing earlier, the Steinhardt online glossaries that could be of assistance to your students to help them build academic vocabulary in civics and history.
Great, thanks. Let's see. Is there a way to use Google Translate in Google Slides?
I'm not sure. Do you know?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I've used it, but not in that format. Yeah.
We'll look into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of questions about Google, like specifically, so maybe that will be something we will follow with.
Yeah.
Let's see. What about privacy waivers and using new tools that assign work and/or track students? Are you guys familiar with anything that we're talking about at the department?
It is my understanding that these conversations are happening. I also think that they are legal in nature, and so I am not a part of those conversations at this point. But I do understand that there are different kind of implications. We do have an upcoming webinar with our legal director. I don't know if that's the content she'll be discussing, but it might be something to raise there.
Okay. Let's see, there seems to be some of them were just sort of questions they were asking each other. Let's see. Will Pathways to Success be available free of charge until the end of the school year?
It'll be forever available. Please access it if you're interested. It's good material, open source, always free.
Yeah.
There's some other free resources people were mentioning. Elevation distance learning resources are free at this time. People asked about RAS Kids again. That is the one that Megan referred. No, this is the one that someone mentioned and Megan referred to as well. That one is at no cost right now, and somebody wanted to make sure we understood it's available in multiple languages.
Oh, good.
Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. Do you have any resources for physics? Maybe it's physics for native Spanish speakers?
There is, I believe there is a Steinhardt online glossary for physics.
Yes.
But let's see if we can locate
I
some
think,
additional
yeah, we need to
supports.
look into that one. I know there are other sources that.
Okay, and then the document you mentioned, linguistic supports document, Megan,
Yes?
is that available, or when will that be available?
Yeah, so the linguistic supports is a portion of the Connecticut English Language Proficiency Standards document. That's the quite large document. It's the second item of on the English learners page. The documents and forms tab. So it says Connecticut English Language Proficiency Standards. You can either access the linguistic supports by clicking on the entire document, the 300-pager, or you can click on various portions of the CALP standards document specifically if you look under the heading. We anticipate that it will be available within the next month, updated, but it is there and it has been there for a while, and it will just be updated. And then what we'll also be doing is we have included the linguistic supports and we've embedded them in some of our other materials, such as the coaching and self-reflection tool for teachers, and we'll be updating that to reflect the new links.
Great. I think that wraps it up for the questions that we have. We had a lot of questions with some resources, and I think that should be part of the question and answer document that we share sometime after this, as soon as we can get the answers. So I want to thank you again, everyone, for attending, and we hope that you all stay well, and please visit our website or reach out to us directly. We're here to help. Thank you very much.
And I just want to really say thank you to Michelle and Gladys. Thank you for I'm glad we were able to work together on this webinar, and I want to thank you all for being here. These are such uncertain times, and it's just really heartening to know that we're working together to provide English learners and all students with the supports they're entitled to and that they deserve. And we're always here. We're here. We're just an email or a phone call away, and we're working together in collaboration with you. So I thank you very, very much for all of your efforts, and I look forward to our continued work together.
Yes, and I also want to say thank you, Megan and Michelle, and I want to thank everyone that attended this workshop. I'm also proud to serve alongside of you in your districts, and your courage gives me hope and allows me to face these difficult times, because you are courageous in doing this work, and I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thanks all.